Right now, millions of people are spending billions of dollars to poison the most nutritious plant on their property. It's a plant that thrives where others die, in the cracks of scorching asphalt and the dust of drought-stricken fields. But in the mid-20th century, a coordinated effort by chemical giants and agricultural boards ensured you'd see it as an enemy, not an asset. It contains more heart-healthy omega-3s than almost any leafy green on Earth. It holds 7 times the vitamin E of spinach. It is a biological miracle that can survive on zero irrigation while rebuilding the soil beneath it. For 4,000 years, it was the backbone of human health. Then, it was erased. Why would modern institutions spend decades and billions to convince you that a literal superfood is a noxious weed? The answer is buried in the rise of the lawn care industry and a specific 1950s policy shift. What you're about to see will change how you look at your own backyard forever. Welcome to Forgotten Food Chronicles, where we uncover the regenerative foods and ancient ecological wisdom that modern institutions tried to erase. Today, we're investigating a plant that was deliberately rebranded from survival food to public enemy. A plant that ancient empires cultivated, that modern science validates, but that billion-dollar industries need you to destroy. Before I tell you its name, you need to understand why they erased it. Because once you know the why, the what will hit differently. And I promise you, you've seen this plant. You might have even killed it. But by the end of this, you'll never look at it the same way again. To understand what was erased, you first need to understand the moment it happened. The 1940s and 50s were a turning point in American culture. Soldiers returned from World War II. Suburbs exploded across the country. And with them came a new obsession: the lawn. Not just any lawn, the perfect lawn, uniform, green, weed-free. It became a symbol of success, of order, of control. And the post-war chemical industry, flush with nitrogen from bomb production and herbicides from chemical warfare research, had a product to sell. In 1956, the narrative shifted. If it wasn't grass, it was a threat. The USDA launched what they called the War on Weeds. Extension offices across the country distributed pamphlets with images of so-called noxious plants. Land-grant universities funded research, not on how to cultivate these plants, but on how to eradicate them. Broadleaf herbicides like 2,4-DD flooded the market, and an entire generation was trained to see diversity as disorder. But here's the thing. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was about economics. By the 1970s, the American lawn care industry was worth billions. Today, it's over $40 billion annually. And the business model is simple. Create a problem, sell the solution, repeat every year. A plant that requires zero inputs can't be patented. It can't be sold in a bag with a markup. It can't be controlled. But a weed? A weed that requires annual herbicide applications, seasonal fertilizers, and professional lawn services? That's not a problem. That's a subscription model. So they didn't just ignore the plant we're talking about. They actively vilified it. It was scrubbed from agricultural textbooks, removed from USDA crop databases, left out of extension office recommendations. In the early 20th century, it had been listed in seed catalogs as a cultivated vegetable. By 1970, those same catalogs didn't mention it at all. The rebranding was surgical. What had been called a blessed vegetable in the Middle East became pigweed in America. What indigenous communities had harvested for millennia was reclassified as a nuisance. What Greek physicians had used to treat inflammation was now something you paid someone to spray with poison. And the funding followed the narrative. In the 1960s and 70s, land-grant universities received millions in grants to study herbicide efficacy. Research on cultivation, nutrition, and ecological benefits of so-called weeds? Virtually zero. By 1980, an entire generation had been trained to see this plant as the enemy. Children grew up pulling it from gardens. Homeowners spent weekends dousing it with chemicals. Municipalities banned it from public parks. The consequences were invisible but devastating. A free, drought-resistant, nutrient-dense food source was growing in the cracks of food deserts, literally in the sidewalks of neighborhoods where people couldn't afford fresh vegetables, and it was being poisoned. While families inside those homes suffered from omega-3 deficiencies, heart disease, and inflammation, the solution was growing outside their front doors, and they'd been taught to kill it. The plant they erased? You've probably seen it. You might have even killed it. This is Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, and if you've ever pulled weeds from your driveway, you've probably destroyed it. Those thick, reddish stems, those small, paddle-shaped leaves that glisten in the sun. That plant that comes back no matter how many times you rip it out? That's Purslane, and it's one of the most nutritionally dense, ecologically resilient plants on the planet. For most of human history, that wasn't controversial. It was obvious. In 1973, archaeologists working in the Near East uncovered ancient storage pits dating back over 4,000 years. Inside, preserved alongside grains and legumes, were thousands of purslane seeds. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a weed that snuck into the food supply. This was infrastructure. This was intentional cultivation. The Persians grew it in royal gardens. The Greeks called it andrachne and used it to cool fevers and reduce inflammation. Roman soldiers carried it across Europe, planting it in garrison gardens from Britannia to North Africa. In ancient China, it was both food and medicine, valued for its ability to survive in poor soil and extreme heat. By the medieval period, purslane had spread across every inhabited continent. It wasn't just tolerated, it was cultivated. In the Mediterranean, families harvested it by the basketful. In West Africa, it was a staple green in stews. Indigenous peoples across North America knew it as verdolagas and integrated it into seasonal diets. They didn't just eat purslane, they understood it. Traditional farmers knew that purslane wasn't just a crop, it was a partner. It grew low to the ground, shading the soil and keeping it cool during the hottest months. Its thick leaves held moisture, reducing evaporation. It required no irrigation, no fertilizer, no pesticides. You planted it once, and it came back year after year, reseeding itself, spreading across bare ground, turning dust into living soil. In polyculture systems, gardens where multiple crops grow together, purslane acted as a living mulch. It protected the roots of taller plants. It prevented erosion. It created habitat for beneficial insects. And when the harvest came, you could eat the whole plant: stems, leaves, flowers, seeds. Greek healers used it to treat wounds and digestive issues. Chinese medicine prescribed it for infections and inflammation. Indigenous North American communities ate it fresh, cooked it into soups, and dried it for winter. It wasn't a superfood in the modern marketing sense. It was just food. Reliable, accessible, free. And then there's the nutrition. Purslane contains more omega-3 fatty acids than almost any other leafy green on Earth, up to 400 milligrams per 100 grams. That's more than some fish. It has 7 times the vitamin E of spinach, 6 times the beta-carotene. It's loaded with vitamin C, magnesium, potassium, and calcium. Recent studies have found it contains significant amounts of melatonin and glutathione, powerful antioxidants most plants don't produce in measurable quantities. But here's what makes purslane truly remarkable. It's a C4 plant. Most crops, corn, wheat, soy, rice, use what's called C3 photosynthesis. It's efficient under ideal conditions. But when temperatures spike and water becomes scarce, C3 plants struggle. They close their pores to conserve water, which means they can't absorb carbon dioxide. Growth slows, yields drop. Purslane uses C4 photosynthesis. It's a different biological pathway, one that allows it to keep its pores open even in extreme heat. It doesn't just survive drought, it thrives in it. While industrial crops wilt under climate stress, purslane keeps growing, keeps photosynthesizing, keeps building soil. For 4,000 years, humans understood this. And then, in less than a generation, we were taught to forget. If you're still watching, you're part of a small group who knows this now. Most people will scroll past this. They'll keep buying what the industry tells them to. They'll never know that Purslane existed, that it was erased, that it's growing outside their door right now. But you're here. You chose to learn what they tried to bury. If you believe this knowledge deserves to survive, if you think the people who suppressed it shouldn't have the final word, then help us reach the people who need to hear this. Subscribe. Share this with one person who won't ignore it. That's how suppressed knowledge survives. So if Purslane is this nutritious, this resilient, this proven, why isn't it in grocery stores? Why isn't it on restaurant menus? Why are we still treating it like a pest? The answer is systemic. Purslane doesn't fit the industrial food model. It's a succulent, which means it has a short shelf life once harvested. It wilts within days unless kept cool and moist. You can't ship it cross-country in a refrigerated truck and expect it to look appealing under fluorescent lights a week later. It's also nearly impossible to mechanize. Industrial farms rely on machines that plant, spray, and harvest in uniform rows. Purslane grows low, sprawls unpredictably, and reseeds itself wherever it wants. You can't program a combine harvester to chase it across a field. And then there's the economics. Purslane requires no patented seeds, no fertilizer, no pesticides, no irrigation infrastructure. For seed companies, chemical manufacturers, and industrial ag suppliers, it represents zero revenue. There's no profit in a plant that grows itself. The USDA crop insurance program, which determines what American farmers can afford to grow, covers over 130 crops. Purslane isn't one of them. If a farmer plants it and loses the harvest to weather or pests, they lose everything. No safety net, no subsidy, no support. So it remains invisible, marginalized, dismissed. But the science hasn't forgotten. In 2014, researchers at the University of Catania in Italy published a study on Purslane's ability to grow in saline soils. Land poisoned by salt accumulation from over-irrigation and chemical fertilizers. Most crops can't survive in these conditions. Purslane thrived. It didn't just tolerate the salt, it helped remove it from the soil, making the land viable again for other plants. A 2017 study from Texas A&M found that Purslane, when used as a ground cover in arid climates, increased soil moisture retention by up to 20% and boosted microbial activity. The researchers concluded that it could play a critical role in regenerating degraded farmland in the American Southwest. In 2020, a team in Egypt measured Purslane's carbon sequestration potential. They found that its dense root system and rapid growth cycle allowed it to capture and store significant amounts of atmospheric carbon, far more per square meter than most annual crops. The science is catching up to what ancient farmers always knew. Purslane isn't just food. It's a soil builder, a climate ally, a blueprint for resilience. And quietly, it's coming back. In permaculture food forests across the US, Purslane is being planted intentionally as a living mulch beneath fruit trees and perennial vegetables. In urban community gardens, foragers are teaching neighbors how to identify it, harvest it, and eat it. In regenerative farms from California to North Carolina, it's being integrated into polyculture systems, not as a weed, but as a partner. You can find it yourself, right now, for free. Purslane grows in sidewalk cracks, garden beds, disturbed soil, gravel driveways, anywhere the ground has been broken and left alone. The stems are thick and succulent, often reddish or purple. The leaves are small, smooth, and paddle-shaped. When you break a stem, it's juicy inside, not fibrous. One warning, there's a toxic look-alike called spurge. The difference is simple. Spurge has a milky white sap. Purslane's sap is clear. If you see white liquid, don't eat it. Once you've identified Purslane, the whole plant is edible. You can eat it raw in salads. It has a slightly lemony, peppery taste. You can sauté it like spinach. You can pickle it. You can add it to soups and stews, where it thickens the broth naturally. You can buy Purslane seeds online for $3. Or you can walk outside and find it growing for free. doing what it's done for 4,000 years. Surviving, thriving, waiting to be remembered. As industrial agriculture depletes the last of our topsoil, as droughts intensify and food systems fracture, Purslane is quietly offering a different path. Not a revolution, a remembering. It heals the body. It protects the soil. It resists the system. It lives in the cracks of the empire, in the wild edges they couldn't plow, in the driveways they couldn't sterilize. It lives in the seeds kept by elders who never forgot, and in the memory of land that remembers its roots. This is Forgotten Food Chronicles, where we uncover the regenerative foods and ancient ecological wisdom modern institutions tried to erase. If this changed how you see your lawn, make sure you're subscribed. And if you know someone who needs to see this, someone who'd actually grow this, eat this, remember this, send it to them. That's how erased knowledge comes back.